Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rocket Lasso Live, episode 18 of Season 4. And it is the second to last episode of the season. If I had timed things better, then this would actually be the last episode of the season because lots of things are coming together all at the same time. Not least of all is the Half-Res event in Chicago. If you are anywhere, well, if you're able to travel, and if you're anywhere near the Midwest, you should definitely head on over to halfres.com and grab yourself a ticket because it's going to be a really fun event. It's a one-night mini conference, and we're flying a bunch of people in. We're going to have this amazing speaker panel, and then there's prizes and food and lots of great networking and everything. So super looking forward to it, but I run the event, and it eats up a lot of time and effort. So yeah, we've got an entire committee of people, and everybody's working hard to try and get the event to actually happen. So next week should be the season finale. I'll probably be giving away some of our plugins there. I haven't super thought about it, but that's what we typically do, so we'll probably do that. Tropes, it's a good time to come back and visit Chicago if you're missing it. But yeah, you should head on over to halfres.com. A whole bunch of effort was put into a new website this year, and I don't know, it's exciting. But anyway, we got a regular live stream today. So start getting those questions together. If you have a link, post it in Twitch. If you're watching on YouTube, that's fine. You can type out questions, but you can't put a link on YouTube. So if you want to do a link, you have to head over to Twitch. I have the same link everywhere. Just search Rocket Lasso and you'll find it easily. And if it is a video, make sure you call out the specific time code or the effect that you're interested in. If it is some sort of animation or a reference from something that somebody created, make sure I can see the artist or studio that made it. I need to see their name to give credit, otherwise we won't tackle it. Tropes might have found the link. All right, what do we got here? So this is from June Lee, and it's called the Metaball Tower. And it was made in Rhino, Grasshopper. So yeah, completely different software. But it was, kind of like, oh, how could we make something kind of like this? And using metaballs, but we don't use metaballs anymore. We use the volume builder, but we can definitely tackle something along these lines. Let's see, how would we want to do it? Now, maybe we can make something a little bit fancier even, because, yeah, I'm going to take that and then go even crazier with it so we can add more to it. In fact, why don't we use one of... Okay, here we are in 26. Now I should be able to create our text, and we can say episode 18. And now I can click on that and type in the word lemon milk, and I can grab one of my favorite fonts. This is the font I usually use for Rocket Lasso. How big do I want to go? 50? Yeah, 50 seems okay. Kind of square-ish middle. And something that I've been, well, what I will do is feed this into a fracture. So we'll just fracture these all apart. Put a bit of spacing in between them. Not much, just a small gap. And we could... how many pieces do we want? Maybe a few more than this. Sources, let's jump this up to 55. Yeah, that looks better. And I want to even out the polygon count. A couple different things we might do there. I mean, well, let's see what happens if we just directly feed this into a... I'm going to bake it down via connect, don't weld, and then feed that into a remesh and just see what that looks like out of the gate. Okay, not amazing. I feel like if we give it a little bit more polygons to work with, it'll look better. So let's go back to the original text, go to our caps, and I'll say that, let's even do a, I think it's Delani, and now you see it's going to make a bunch of subdivisions there. And we could like try and increase or decrease the density. Now it does add on a lot of polygons, although it's not doing a great job on some of these other ones because it needs the proper subdivision here. So if we set this to subdivided, now you see everything gets super subdivided. And we could even add extra segments traveling through. I don't know if we want to make something that high poly, but now if we turn on the remesh, I just want to see if it can, if because of the polygon, yeah, you can see it's doing a better job there. Part of that being it just has more polygons to work from because we're trying to match it. But it's remeshing. Now we got a nice even polygon count throughout. I could even drop this adaptiveness down so everything gets even more even. And if you were bothered by the Fong, I think we could say manual there. And yeah, now the Fong will be fixed because otherwise the Connect was doing a custom Fong. Okay, so now we've got this text, and let's give that a save. and go into the scene file, save this as 1A, and I don't know, what do we call this one? Volume blobs. We're going to be using the slicer, but not yet. Okay, so we've got all these different pieces. We got, you know, I think quite reasonable polygon counts. Control D, go into our simulation, CPU, and I'm going to turn off gravity. I'm doing CPU because my machine doesn't like the GPU on these. Okay, now on our remesh, I can add a simulation cloth. And what I want to do is start to balloon over a certain amount of time. I can also tell it to be very bendy and maybe a little stretchy. So, and let's overpressure it up to 2. So over the course of 30 frames, and this it might not be super fast, but it shouldn't be terribly slow either. Yeah, that's not bad. But anyway, you can see that we get all these nice pieces like just kind of inflating and pushing away from each other, which I think is just kind of a cool effect. Like I really dig the way that that looks. One of these pieces is getting stretched to an angle that it doesn't like, but you know, not the biggest deal. We also got a couple of small little baby pieces, and that's not doing anybody any good. I'm trying to think of any way we could get around. How could we, is there a way of parametrically getting rid of something that's below a certain size? I can't really think of one. And let me see, I'm going to change some of this remesh a little bit, because you can see that we're getting some very, you know, like this face is very not subdivided. So I'm going to see if we can, you know, do some adaptiveness, and will that, no, that's still not doing that. So we could increase the polygon count. I haven't really tried going above 100%, but obviously the slider is designed such that we can go up. I don't want to go too far up. Yeah, isn't that strange? I mean, it's happening around, but like this piece in particular just doesn't want to subdivide. And it's pretty well subdivided here. Back to the original text, let's increase that. That'll just even out the curve a bit. And under our caps, I will increase the density so it's full. We also say quad dominant, so those look more like quads. Maybe they'll like it, maybe it won't. I don't know. But yeah, the remesh just does not want that to be subdivided. Even, yeah, I'm at 200% now, and still doesn't want to subdivide that. I mean, it is detecting hard edges. Let's say none. Okay, turning off hard edges worked. Let's drop this back to 100%. Everything gets a little less sharp. You can see that these curves are just like, whatever, we'll just do this curve. But at least it's giving us an even polygon count. We still get the tiny things, and I can't think of any way. I cannot think of any way to make a bit of model disappear if it's smaller than a particular size. I mean, I can think of, you know, mathematically how to do it, but you see we do end up with a bunch of tiny pieces, and we can just ignore those, but it's just kind of something that's popped in my head. But you can see that this is working fine. These are inflating pretty much exactly the way I want them to. Working just fine. Love it. Okay, now, look at this weird piece. I wonder where that's sliced. Let's find it. Yeah, oh, just in the middle of that. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so, you know, now we've got these kind of individual pieces that can inflate and drift away. We already cranked up our bendiness to be pretty much as it can be. Let's see what happens if we push our stretchiness. I know this will probably be too much, but let's just see what happens if we say they're very stretchy. We still get these little pinch points on these hard corners, which is not necessarily wrong at all. The stretchiness isn't actually hurting it at all. I thought it might. And let's overpressure it more, but have it take longer. We're slowly inflating. Everything gets pushed away. Excellent. Okay, so with that happening, we can now feed this into another, well, into a volume. I think, well, I hope that this works. Let's say that that goes into a volume builder, which will go into a volume mesher. It's very low poly right now, but I just want to see if it actually runs, which it seems to. So yeah, now we get these really nice blobs going around. Of course, this will start slowing us down dramatically as I increase our voxel size. In addition to that, I probably want to do some things like some dilating so we can inflate all of these a bit, and maybe not even too much, but just enough so that if they're close by, they begin blobbing into each other. And, you know, one that we love is smooth. Smoothing goes a really long way to making these things like blob nicely into each other. Unfortunately, it takes the longest to calculate. So let's see what kind of playback we get from that. You know what? Not horrible. So now we can get our text and we get these different pieces and it just kind of inflates and blobs around. Blob, 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 blob. And eventually different pieces will drift far enough away that they would disconnect. Now, if we are vaguely using the original reference as inspiration, something that might be a good idea would be exploding this out into 2 separate fractures so we could treat them separately. So let's do that. I don't think that would be too difficult. We can actually take this all the way back to the original shape, and I shall feed in a plane effector and scale uniformly, absolutely, to a -1, which makes everything disappear. And then create a random field. And this random field will be set to pure random. So pure randomness if it's being affected or not by 0 to 100%. And then my new favorite modifier layer of quantize. If we drop that down to 1, essentially it's saying on or off, 0 or 1. So we've now got, in theory, mathematically, half the pieces. Let's choose a seed that is kind of giving us a good layout because it is random. So it's something that's giving us a pretty even distribution of there and not there is what I'm looking for. That's pretty good. So that would hang out with this fracture. You can just make a child. It doesn't hurt anything. And then, honestly, I think I'd copy and paste this entire rig. So we have 2 identical things. We could... I mean, we could do certain instances in certain places, but all I need to do is grab this plane and grab, actually all I have to do is say invert. So now this one has the exact opposite pieces of the other one. So if I say that both these fractures shall be automatically colorized, we'll take this one and make it, I don't know, yellow. Grab this one and make it greenish. Activate, actually we have to activate a bunch of things. Bloop. So now we should get, 2 different blobs that together make the shape of the text. We just have to remember to make any changes to both of them at the same time, which might be easier said than done. You'll see if I grab the volume builder that you can only manipulate one at a time. Although, here's a neat way we can get around that. If I delete the smooth and delete the erode and create a volume, you just have to make a smooth. But if I make the smooth, that should be getting fed into the volume builder if I drag it in. And I can set, that's the smooth, that's fine. But let's make a duplicate of it and change it to be a dilate. So now we've actually made these into separate objects, which is very handy. So now inside of our volume builder, I can say I would like to inflate and I would like to smooth, and I can change those parameters outside the model. Inside this builder, I'll say that this one should inflate, delete, and it should then smooth. I don't really see them change there, which is, oh, okay, it does work. Dilate. Why is that, oh, I guess the smooth might be obliterating it. So let's get rid of the smooth. And yeah, how far do we want to inflate? Probably enough to have them kind of intersect a little bit, because why not? And then we can smooth them however much we want. That will round out the sides. I don't think we should do much rounding, just a little bit. So that, I just want the space to fill up pretty well. So now we get 2 different blobs set up, looking pretty good. And 2 rigs, they should, the original inflation, everything should still work. So I think I should be able to play and everything should behave. But you see now we've got 2 separate pieces, all based off the same information. And the inflation should make it so that these just barely kind of look like they're pushing against each other, which is kind of what I wanted. And yeah, that's looking good. That's fun. If anybody has any additional things they'd like to see me add into it, like throw it out there for like additional elements of what, something that would be cool. But yeah, now we've got these different rigs working perfectly fine. Now, let's do it the not plug-in way first. So let's say I want to, if we go back to the reference, which is right here, you know, we sort of get these, you know, just blobs, and you see that they are kind of alternating and missing. So we just get these thin slices, and the gap between them is larger than the actual thickness of the layer, and a large gap in a thinner layer. So the way I might do that is with another Voronoi fracture. So we're going to feed this back into another fracture object. That's going to try and break this. The layers are going to start getting a little bit crazy. You can see right now the order of operations is kind of like, what am I even doing? So we'll see if this even works. This is fun. The fracture is actually taking each individual segment and colorizing them differently. That's kind of fun. But I actually want to break it manually, and we can do that via a matrix set to be, let's say, 20 tall, 1 by 1. So we get a vertical series of slices here, and I can, this is per step, so I can just keep on increasing it. And tell the fracture that this is the source, and let's see if it works. So what it should do is do a series of perfectly horizontal cuts. But seeing the way that this is kind of freaking out a little bit, I think that we might be getting some sort of order of operation issue going where, you know, we're fracturing and then meshing and then deforming and then voluming and then fracturing. It doesn't seem, I don't know. I have run into this happening a couple times on various things. And like, I'm not sure what to make of it. Like, it kind of seems a little bit like a bug to me. But yeah, I don't know what to make of that. So maybe, I don't want to, we could bake something down. Obviously that would work. The fracture, let me see, what's the best way? I want to show you the way you could do this with a fracture so that we're doing it without plugin. So I'll just make that editable temporarily. And if I feed that into the fracture, is it still not? Actually, my viewports. Oh, okay, there, it refreshed. Turn this on. Okay, there we go. Now you're at least seeing the one I made editable. You can see how I'm getting a bunch of layers traveling up. And inside the fracture, I think if we say offset fragments, yeah, we start putting a gap in there like that, the colors are going to be popping around. But if I turn that off, you can see how we can get some slices going. But it didn't like the stacking. And there is, well, potentially an issue depending on the way you want to do it. This is actually making cuts of the pieces. So you can see that we still end up with these angles. And if you want, you know, if you want, like you see how this kind of curves down and then back up again, if that's what you want, this works great for you. So yeah, totally recommend that as a method you can do. But let's try, and I don't know, Slicer might not like this entire stack either. Let's try loading my plugin Slicer, and I'm gonna feed that in here, and let's see if it can handle like this stack, because the refreshing issue could be internal on like this volume mesher. It's like, I can't go any further. It did work. There seems to be some sort of like viewport refresh issue happening where when I rotated the camera, it suddenly popped in. Let's just see what ends up happening here. I'm going to create more slices, and it is slicing. And I will, let's, there's our spread. I'm going to remote link into this object. That is a good idea, actually. So right now, we could make it a child, but now we're worried about that stack. But if I say, you know what, I want to remote link into it, then that's sort of saying like, hey, I'm gonna come in after the fact. So after you've done all your calculations, then I can run. And what matters is where I place this in the hierarchy. So now I've done that, it's real, okay, now it's running super quick. So I could move the slicer up to wherever I want to, and you can see I can increase the number of slices. Let's visually hide the original model. Yeah, you see, look, I just hid that model and it's not refreshing the viewport, but if I rotate the camera, it does. And that's got nothing to do with Slicer. There's something about this stack is causing that. But anyway, you can see we've got a bunch of slices now. And in Slicer, we could set that to geometry mode. And I could say, hey, create flat geometry. But we can also do extruded geometry. And you'll see the difference here, if we extrude that, is we don't get any kind of horizontal dimension to anything. These lines each become perfectly extruded upward. And that's the difference between what you get from the slicer and what you would get from the fracture object. So you see how we get these nice pieces in between. We can change the thickness if we kind of want it to match the reference a little bit. And Then let's make a second slicer, and this one will reference the second volume. And again, not refreshing, so I'll rotate. So this slicer is free to be moved wherever I want, so I can move and offset these slices so they can be slightly in between. And because I had those intentionally kind of overlap, you see how we can actually get these passing through each other a little bit. And the more I inflate it, the more that would be the case. So let's switch these to be some sort of color. I misclicked, but let's run with it. Nice. Yeah, so now we get these slices passing through, and we can get all the individual layers. We got all sorts of settings inside a slicer that we could play with. You can't push them too far, but we could do things like expand and actually inflate these out a little bit. Yeah, you see that those can get wider, or you can even pinch them in. And we've got the smooth, which is very nice, where I can actually round these out. So you can see right here that you end up with like two, actually I think there's even three. You see there's like a line, 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 and then really big gap. But you can add in a couple layers of smoothing. So I can do that, and you see how it spreads everything out, and the entire thing gets smoother and rounder. So just one or two layers of that could look nice. You have to be careful once it's animating. But I'll save this as the next version. Underscore slicer, because there's a plugin. Yeah, so that's working fine. I'm gonna hit play. It should be safe enough to hit play. I don't think it's gonna be quick, but yeah, it totally works. Let me pause that. Show only polygons. I think we're showing, yeah, SSAO already. So yeah, that's working well. Everything's intersecting pretty much perfectly. And we can create as many different layers as we wanted to. We just get these nice slicer blobs. So yeah, just another reason why we made slicer, because it, you know, a lot more control, a lot more options, turn into automatic geometry. And yeah, looking pretty cool. Now what I would potentially do here is, like, it's unlikely you want text to kind of blob away, so you probably want to run it backwards. And so why don't we even go ahead and do it, because why not? But you see when we rewind all the way, if it refreshes, where's that first blob? What's not showing up here? Blah, blah, blah. Just turning on and off the visual of that seemed to change if it showed up. Yeah, turn them off, they're not showing, but if I rotate the camera, they pop in. Anyway, yeah, that's there, and you can totally read it, so you'd probably want to run it backwards. So my thought is, I mean, these would have to run into each other, simulation-wise, but can we do that? Can we, we haven't broken anything, so let's hit save, and I'm going to bake as Alembic, and can we do that with two objects selected? Because I want them running into each other. It's not taking too long. We'll let that go. Zach, you were talking about it earlier. I'm not sure specifically what part, but I do feel like, you know, the task manager, like doing that crazy looping thing, that could be a bug. It could be, you know, there could just be an inherent thing where you can create feedback loops. Typically, they make sure that that can't happen. But you know, like this viewport not refreshing and that task manager flashing, like I personally am considering those bugs, but I could be missing some detail. Inflate the slices, possibly, Mr. Parn. Like that's dangerous, but I like the idea. So let's turn off my slices for a moment. I'm going to turn off these hierarchies. And now we've got these two volumes, which hopefully means I can hit play and everything's running in real time, like, you know, working nice and clean. But the real reason I bake those out to Alembic is because I want to, don't use the animation. I'm going to say Control D, project, no, animation, linear. So at time of 0, I would like to say that these are at frame 90. And then at the end, I'll say they're at frame 0. So I'm reversing the animation. So now we start out with a big blob, and then when the animation is done, you're revealing the text. And you know, let's put another second on the end just so we can actually see it in that final state. And we get bing. Excellent. So now we reactivate our slicers. Say slicer 1, don't reference the volume anymore. Instead, reference the Alembic. Second slicer, reference the Alembic. Hide the original Alembics. And now you see slicer should be slicing all those up. And we've got them running in reverse. I don't know what it is about the slicing effect, but they always look so cool. Yeah, if I were to keyframe it differently, I'd probably have the inflation start very slowly because you kind of want that to fade out here. But right now, there's kind of this harsh, like, initial bump, which makes sense because they're inflating and suddenly bumping into each other. But I'd keyframe it to go nice and slow in the beginning. Now, I know somebody was probably just making a joke, but saying inflate the slices. Well, we can't inflate the slices while it's animated. They'd have to be static because simulation, no dynamic stuff can run on something that's changing a point count, and every single frame is a completely brand new point count, unrelated to a frame before. And I think we made it, yeah, when we programmed in our version of these extrudes, we didn't worry about the caps having any subdivision, so they're just end sides. So what I would do is say that both of these would be geometry. And keep in mind, like I said, we can't keyframe, or we can't animate it. So I'm going to grab both these volumes and delete my keyframes. So now it's just, those are just static models now, not moving. So then, oh, it might freak out. Anyway, let's see what happens if I feed the slicer into a extrude, and it might not like it because the Cinema 4D extrude was not designed to work with this type of model, but it seems to be doing an okay job. So let's go, I mean, they'll be intersecting, so let's go easy on that. And duplicate. Okay, so we got that. Now I can grab both extrudes and go into caps and say Delaunay subdivision. Yeah, so it's going to give us all these triangles. And yeah, that's as low as we can go. This is quite a few polygons. I'm, slightly worried about what it'll do, but, we just got to try it. Save as C. So nothing is keyframed anymore, meaning I'm just going to steal this inflating tag, which should be pretty much doing it for us. The only thing I'll do is tell it to go even slower. So let's tell it to take 90 frames to get to this inflated state. And that should be all we need to do. I'm going one frame at a time just in case, because I just have no idea what this is going to do. So each of these individual layers is reacting kind of strongly. I'm not sure. We turned off this entire hierarchy, so that's not something to collide with. So these are acting as if they're colliding. I mean, kind of interesting looking. But they are, well, it's not taking so long that I'm scared to hit play. So now they're going to slowly start inflating, but like they already started moving, and I'm not sure why they started moving. We can see if anything was intersecting, but I don't think they would have been. They're really thin right now. I feel like we should be seeing some inflation right now, but they just look like potato chips right now. Although it's probably, we might need to inflate them like way more, because triple their pressure could be very little now that I think about it. But yeah, look, these are not intersecting at all. Maybe the thickness, maybe they're slightly intersecting because of thickness. So anyway, I'm going to say that these are like 50 times the pressure. Actually, let's turn it off for a moment. I just want to see if the intersection thing is a thing. Yeah, okay, I fixed it. The thickness was so thick that they were bumping into each other, so that's what was causing that. Okay, now let's turn on the ballooning. So if you imagine the volume that these are taking up, like this pancake would take up a lot less space than a big inflated balloon of the surface area of a pancake. So we probably have to have the overpressure way higher. So now I've done that. Yeah, there we go. Now they're inflating. I probably went overboard because they're inflating very, very, very quickly. Whoa, that was cool. Look at that. Now, yeah, they're almost entirely going to be inflating vertically. But that's a cool look. Look at that. I like it. Let's feed these into subdivision surfaces, even if it's just a single layer. I wish Automac's fine. I wish it was filtered up from the child. But let's set these both to only one subdivision. And I just want to distinguish between the two. So we'll go black and white this time. Do we want to inflate? Yeah, I'll leave it the same. The inflation looked kind of cool. Yeah, a little subdivision surface goes a long way for, like, you know, making these look a lot smoother. And it happens after the fact because, of course, all of the simulation stuff is a deformation. That looks really cool. That's a completely brand new effect. Look at that. I'm quite pleased with that. I'm quite pleased indeed. Thanks for, I know it was like a silly thing of like, inflate the slicer, but it's like, well, let's do it for real. Because that looks freaking sweet. Like, look at the structure. Like, we get such structure out of it. Looks pretty cool. Like I said, I really love like weird follow-up questions to something we're playing with. So if anybody has something additional that we could potentially do here, like even if we go back a couple steps and then try something else kind of weird and different, like feel free to throw it out there. JM, we're making weird stuff. We're way off the rails now, but we sliced a bunch of stuff up and now we're inflating it. And it looks really cool. Burp. Yeah. There's so many different things we could probably tweak settings-wise that would make huge differences too. For instance, friction of 0 means everything should be able to slide past each other very easily. And we might see individual pieces kind of pop out and fly away. Maybe, maybe not. But like this area in particular, those were seem to get really pinched in. I just want to see if it goes like, oh, they seem to be, you know, friction didn't seem to have too big of a difference on there. They definitely moved apart more, but not as much as I thought there would be a difference. I don't know if this is a good idea, but we can also make a floor, which I will subdivide a bit more. Turn that into a simulation collider, and let's turn gravity back on again. Squish. It might start going. It might pass straight through, honestly. There's a lot of collisions happening, so yeah, you see a lot of that's escaping through. Yeah, as when one layer pushes on another layer, which pushes on another layer, which pushes on another, like I'm not surprised that that's happening. So yeah, that's not a good addition. A lot of things are escaping, although like kind of fun and chaotic down here, but not what we want. You know, we could increase our collisions and whatnot, but we're already kind of at the limit of what I'd want to be doing on a live stream as far as our frame rate is concerned. Yeah, pretty funky. Yeah, Crossfader saying throw it in a box and then squish it. It would be, I mean, they were escaping out of there, but just for a quick experiment, if we did trap these inside of a sphere, how well will it be able to handle it? I don't know. Simulation collider, I'm gonna say only collide with the back. And let's say render, display, use lines. Okay, so now we got a box that we're in. And you know what? Let's even switch that to a icosahedron. So will this work better? I wouldn't be surprised if it works better. So I turn off gravity, so they're going to push apart. And these are only allowed to collide with one side. But And then potentially we could keyframe the sphere moving down, but I'm not so sure that that would work too well. Yeah, they're definitely staying trapped in this better. It's not going to fill the whole volume, but it's looking kind of cool. Now, I don't know if this is a good idea. In fact, I almost guarantee it's a bad idea. But if we say simulation cloth, and then we balloon that, and we say over the course of 120, it's going to pressure itself down to 0.5, that one wants to shrink. But I don't think these collisions will be quite as nice. But yeah, one's going down while the other's going up. So let's just see how these fight each other. That's reacting interestingly. I mean, that's actually, that's true. We're ballooning, where really what we want to do would be shrinking, which is a different concept entirely. So yeah, this is deflating. That's not what I want. That's not what I want at all. Turn off balloon. Actually, let's just undo a few times, because what I want is this to be the collider, and let's keyframe the radius down to 150. So yeah, that's going to shrink over time. This might straight up pass through, because I know we're not changing point count, but we are refreshing a model. So things might just like start passing straight through the surface. I wouldn't be surprised if it does. Now, I have a hope that it does better, because this collider tag is only on the back. It's doing an okay job. Because it's on the back, anything that passes through is going to keep trying to get pushed forward. Squish. Yeah, our ability to layer things up and layer things up and layer things up is getting pretty crazy. A couple of tools in Cinema now, like our volume mesher, which is an improved volume mesher, and the remeshing, and this new simulation stuff, like, you know, we are definitely getting the ability to do certain things that we could not do before. Whoa, a couple of those look like they might have exploded. I didn't quite catch when they exploded, but we're trapped in a sphere for sure. Yeah, pretty fun. Weird, wonderful things we can do. Anyway, I think it might be time to go to the next question. Zach's asking, is there any way to control where the ballooning happens? And I guess there really isn't. I thought there would be a twirl down on them. There isn't. What we could do is tell certain areas to be bendy or stretchy with a vertex map. Of course, we'd have to make this editable right now. But if we made a vertex map and we said, hey, you're bendy here or bendy there, then we could say, oh, these parts are really stiff and other parts would inflate. We already know that you have to be careful there, because certain parts will like super overinflate and other parts will get not bendy at all. But unfortunately right now, yeah, there is no twirl down for... I guess that might make sense, because this is just adding pressure, and the where it's happening would be based on how bendy the different parts are. But they'd still get very round. Even if we said something, if we said this wasn't very bendy, let's say 0 bendy, 0 stretch, we still got the same overpressure happening. So they're going to try and maintain like this disc shape a little bit more, but not much more. Yeah, you can see that they're looking more like charcoal briquettes instead of being more spherical, and that's the extent that bendiness could stop it from happening. Although I think these shapes do look kind of cool. I kind of like them being a little more structural. So this would be minimal inflation, and then maximal inflation would be all of the stretchiness and bendiness added in there. But yeah, doing a fine job of filling up the space. I don't think any of them are exploding this time. Nope, nope. I don't know why that one's deciding to super explode. Yeah, a couple of them are like, nope, I'm taking over. But in any case, still does a good job of filling up the space. Neat. Bruno, hello, welcome. Let's see, maybe use splines as rope and colliding with the inflated text. Yeah, you could totally add ropes in here as well. I'm trying to think of. Actually, that's kind of a neat idea. If let's get rid of the sphere that we're trapping inside, and all this inflation stuff is still fine. I'm just curious what will happen, but let's grab the original text, bring it back again. But I'll get rid of the scaling, so it's the entire thing. And if it still has that same, that's fine. I'll just add in a new dilate. So now you can see I'm inflating again a little bit more. So, now we've just got larger, inflated text. I can make this editable, and now we're left with this mesh. So if I make another slicer, I can say, okay, slicer, I would like you to view not this mesh, but this one. And then you see I've got more outer slices, but now I'll take my slicer and say spin, and we'll spread those out. And now you can see I've automatically created a whole bunch of ropes, potential ropes that are wrapping around the entire thing. So as simple as that. We should be able to keep this procedural and say simulation rope. We can make it very bendy, but I won't make it very stretchy. And let's add on like a lot of friction. I'm gonna add a lot of friction onto everything. So things do not want to casually slide off. Okay, so now we've got ropes that don't have too much thickness, but I just want to see how these interact. So let's hit play. And immediately you can see the ropes. The ropes aren't going to do anything by themselves, but they will react to the rest of the mesh. And you can see it's doing a pretty good job of being tangled around it. This one's getting pushed away. These are actually, look how well it's containing it. It's kind of crazy. Like these ropes are not allowed to stretch. And look, this is saying like, oh, it couldn't. These would be flying out into space, but all these ropes are like, no, you're tangled up. You're not allowed to escape. We're still getting like some of these exploding out and wanting to super inflate. I'm just not sure what's causing that. But these ropes are working so well. I'm going to do an additional thing where I make another slicer, and let's go vertical again. In fact, why don't I angle it slightly, and we'll angle this one slightly just to make it a little more interesting. And this one, just so they don't intersect right away, I'm going to like add a little bit of expansion on them just so they're not perfectly in the same spot. So now we got 2 layers of ropes, which, in theory, these should be way more bundled in. Like they're all kind of tangled up in so many ropes that they might not be able to escape too much. Yeah, look at that. I mean, I'd love to know why this is exploding the way it is, but besides that, like look how like wrangled up these are. Like they're kind of properly netted up and trapped. Some of these are trying to escape through. Like, oh, I didn't even think about it. Well, first of all, let's pause and rewind. Who's our exploder? Who's exploding here? I don't know. So just as a way of like getting a slightly different calculation, I'll move the slicer slightly upward just so that, actually we'll move both of them up. Let's move both of them slightly up so the slices aren't in the exact same spot. So, hopefully that's not happening. And then these slicers, I'm going to grab this one and reset the expansion so it's no longer expanding. So if I grab this rope and say simulation connector, I would like you to connect to other objects. I'll say a live update, and now you can see that, you see we got this connection that was made from here to here, and in theory that's happening. Some of these are really close together, so we can't, I guess they're not, that's not that close together. So let's start increasing our search radius. And now you can see all these little connections being made. So essentially we're now turning these into a proper net. I'm going to say the target length should be like 25% of what they currently are. So they're going to try and pinch in and really hold. So now we are really trapping these inside of a net so they can't slide past each other. That's the goal anyway. We'll just see what it does. So let's try that. We're really throwing a lot at the simulation system here. Well, we still got an exploder here trying to escape, but ignoring that, these are getting trapped within the net really well. Yeah, working very nicely. They get trapped in the net. Like the rope works way better than you think it would. Like, and Slicer just being able to create these instant nets for us, like that is working shockingly well. And you know, those could just keep getting layered up too. If I just make another slicer, let's rotate this one to go backward. Now we can get, like, you know, these slices going. So now they are like really, really properly netted in. And let's again update these live. So this should now be connected to those as well. I guess we probably need this to be on a second object. So that, yeah, those are all interconnecting a little bit better. But yeah, anyway, it's more ropes. The ropes run really quickly, even relative to cloth. A couple, you know, I think some connections were made, but maybe not all. Actually, that probably makes sense. I really wish I could figure out why that bit of cloth wants to explode. That one is too. I mean, we could, you know, crank up the something. We could crank up some of the subdivisions or substeps, and that might stop that from happening. In fact, this one didn't even explode. This one did this time. Very strange. But anyway, Slicer is layering up incredibly well here. I hadn't even thought about like using Slicer on multiple directions to create a net. In the past, I kept on making nets with mesh to spline, which also works, but I kind of like doing it with Slicer. That's kind of cool. Trapping everything inside there. Anyway, that was super fun. What do we got? We got time for more questions, that's for sure. I mean, this is working well enough. I'll just save over the previous one. Brand new question. What do we got? Monthlies had one up there. Let me check YouTube to make sure there's nothing that can jump in. But anyway, Mr. Parn, thanks for mentioning adding ropes in, because that worked really well. Tape wrapping machine. Okay, mute just in case. So we've got an eggplant that is getting kind of saran wrapped up and then blast off. This is from L Motion Lab. It's from 83 weeks ago. I wonder if we got a question like this in the past. Regardless if we did or didn't, we've got new tools now. We got the new simulation system, so we can test and see if we could do something along those lines with the new simulation system. This might be asking a lot of it, but let's see what we can do. Just because it'll be something easy, I'll just grab some text here. Let's grab, I don't know, let's number 9, middle, something bigger. Let's do Gotham bold. That'll work. Add a little bit more thickness to it. I do think an even polygon count here is a good idea. So let's jump this again to subdivided. Get rid of our rotation. Set this up to 10. Caps, set that to regular grid or Delaunay. That could be fed into a wonderful remesh. And now we get, yeah, look at that mesh. Beautiful, beautiful. Just pinching in a little bit there. But anyway, good enough for me for now. That is our text. If we're going to wrap something, we can't have it pre-wrapped. We make it very bendy. I'm trying to think of the simplest way that we can prove the concept. So here's the thought. I'll make a helix. Make it vertical. Give it 0 height and a decently small radius here. And now we spin it around a whole bunch of times. Good enough for now. And that would get extruded. Let's say up on Y. We'll set it to 200 for now. No, 100 is fine. Let's leave it that way. We can potentially start making it go up and down if that's the case. So, here's a thought. Turn off, well, CPU, turn off gravity. the text will become a collider, simulation collider. This will be cloth. We have options here, like we can give this a subdivision or two. And we could potentially make this tighter overall, but let's make a cylinder, which I will reset the transform on. That's fine. So that's kind of the spool holding it in place. I suppose I'll just make that a collider as well, but I'll give it 0 friction so things can freely slide off of it. Then I want, does this work? Simulation connector. I don't think a connector, I'm gonna say other objects, show it, increase the radius. No, I'm sorry, not other objects. Yeah, I want other objects. Yeah, see, this can't see this letter automatically. We have to belt it to it, which is fine. That probably means we need to make it editable. Do I want to do that? Probably. I'm just trying to make it as clean as I can before we do it. That's, no, not quite. I don't like that pinch. We're getting a bad pinch right here. See if I can trick it. Can't quite trick it. I mean, it doesn't. That doesn't super matter. I'll make a duplicate of that for a moment. Make that editable. That's our mesh, which becomes a collider. But now dresser, that needs to be made editable. Yeah, is that what happens? This, I don't want to make this ribbon editable. We can, I just don't want to if we don't have to. Because what we need to do is belt it. So I have to say simulation, belt the cloth onto this mesh. But nothing will work there. So what we have to do is, we do have to make it editable. So I'll make a duplicate, just keep a backup there. That's all still there. Don't worry about the connection. Don't worry about all these tags. Belt, based on some selection. So we do actually want to manually select a few points. That will now belt onto the text. You can see it's going, trying to connect to the nearest possible point. And then the letter, I'll make it null. I'll move the null to the center-ish. Drop the text as a child of it. And that can spin. I'm going to make it linear. Animation, linear. Coordinates. Let's set our rotation. It's going to take a while. That's fine. Nope. Wrong every time. I don't spin at 2,000 degrees to start out with. Might be kind of slow, but let's just see what happens. Yeah, that's all I can think of. Let's save it. Wrapping a model. Let's hit play and just see what we get. This should run relatively quickly. Okay, that's fine. We can make some tweaks right away. Let's tell that to spin way more. I'll even say 10 times more. And let's make that a different color. Okay, spinning. Okay, not bad. A couple things. These are getting caught on each other, not surprisingly. What can we do about that? I'm going to say that the ribbon, which is this, is very bendy. So maximum bendy, just a little bit stretchy. And I'm going to give a very low friction. And then on the text, I'm going to say you have very high friction. It's clipping into it right away. Let's just ignore it for a moment and see what ends up happening. I mean, okay, calm down there. How do we do this? See, this is what sucks about having to make that editable, because I want to make changes to it, but now we'd have to go all the way back to the original. For now, I'll just scoot the text a little off the side. Hopefully that's not enough to catch it. Yeah, maybe. But see, everything else is still going to get kind of pulled. So it's like we need that counter rotating. But you can see it's actually doing a pretty good job wrapping it up. But now the friction, I'm going to increase the friction of that back up again. Yeah, you already see the improved friction there. So now we need this whole thing to move up or down. I mean, I guess we could be faking it. I didn't even think about it, but that's probably a way better way to do it. Maybe, maybe not. If I make this ribbon a straight line, zero that out, and give it tons of, oh yeah, height. What do we got going on here? Oh yeah, radius. 0, 0, radius, everything changes. That now becomes a really long line, which gets extruded. And let's add a 0 on there. That's kind of what we had. Let's double it again. It's really long, but I think that's fine. The pole is now pointless. That gets made editable. It becomes, let's delete that stuff. Copy these tags over. The belting needs to be rebelted, which is fine. Select those points. Set the belt. So those are now trying to move over onto it. The old ribbon's dead. Long live the new ribbon. Okay. It's really far away, but even that's probably fine. Save this as the next version. Boop. Okay. Play. Oop. What do we got? What do we got? Turn off the. Okay, those can't have them be quite that far apart. Not that big of a deal. Just move this closer. Move it a little more central. Okay. Oop. Nope. Is that not going to refresh? I'll just set them again. Okay, there we go. Okay, looking pretty good. This ribbon doing really, really well. Existing way over there. And this starts layering up. Okay, so that's working quite nicely. It could be more subdivided, don't get me wrong. This surface here, which is a collider body, it's only colliding with the front, so they can't go inside. That's all good. We could increase the thickness of the ribbon perhaps a little bit. Maybe that can help prevent a little bit of intersection. More subdivisions obviously would go a long way there. And then we might need to subdivide. Or, yeah, subdividing and increasing our collisions would go a long way. But even at a glance, it's working pretty well. I'll try doubling because we're running pretty well. So this is acting as if there are It's taking twice as long. The mesh is doing okay. That these points are kind of spiky out, but that maybe kind of makes sense to me. And we're not moving up and down yet for it to be catching different spots. And it's not a overly vertical piece of geometry. So keep that in mind. Let's see. I'm going to simplify by making this thinner by just deleting 2 of the stripes. Belt it on again. Let's say that the distance can be weaker and the hover will be weaker. So essentially it's going to try and pull it closer, but in a weaker way. And if we have a smaller ribbon, oh, okay, that bent better the way I was hoping it would. And now, just because it's thinner, we should see it kind of moving up and down a little bit more naturally. Although if it escapes, it might just be fully gone forever. So that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. We can fake it with a simple. How do I do it? Let's do a cone. That seems smart. So if I make a cone right there and a cone right there, then the ribbon can't, it's not going to want to go up past that. And if I drop this inside here, and we'll make those also colliders and make them invisible. And I'll say like 0 friction. 0 bounce. We don't need any bounce. If it goes up too high, it should kind of get stuck there. And then hopefully it would eventually like kind of start going back down again. I'm not even sure if we hit the cone, but yeah, obviously it has stopped there. There's several things. It's funny, this extra loose part down there, but actually that's stopping it from going down. What caused that? Because it seems kind of tight there. We can get a different simulation to pull through. Yeah, what's going on there? I'm not even sure how that's mechanically happening. Let's add more friction. I'm trying to think of how I'd want, I mean, this seems really robust. I'm trying to think of how I want to control the ribbon traveling up and down. There might be like like something very simple we could do because of how relatively robust this seems to be. I'm still not sure how that loop is happening. It just kind of fades in. Not sure what to make of that. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. That was my bad. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, but we could make the text move up and down. That might be the better way to do it, but if we wanted to kind of have it be kind of invisibly doing the wrapping, I'm just curious of, like, let's do something real simple, like make a low poly torus shape facing Z, or an X rather. If I just put this here and we tighten it a bit and then add a animation vibrate tag position of, I don't know, 200 on Y, 0.01, nice and slow. Say that it's a slippery collider body, then yeah, it's very slow. Maybe not that slow. 0.05. And the idea here would be you'd hide that donut. So, 0.1. Go faster, 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 I say. What's our donut doing? All right, I'm gonna go overboard and say 1. So yeah, that can go travel up and down. It should get caught by the cone, and you know it's doing a better job of kind of wrapping the whole thing up. And yeah, the whole thing will get pulled through here. I mean, keep in mind that the only thing pulling this entire ribbon through is the fact that it's kind of tangling up. So the fact that all of these are getting pulled through is like really cool. We could add some friction in there to make sure that things don't start catching up too much, adding in some drag. doing a fine job of wrapping up. If this was more heavily subdivided, obviously you could get sharper, tighter coils on it. And right now it's getting a little bit loose in the way it's wrapping up, and that goes more to the friction. We could probably even set this global damping. Like a pretty high damping here is not a bad thing, if it can handle it. And that's just going to be constantly draining the energy out from parts that it doesn't need. And you would just hide the rest of this ribbon, like it's just traveling way out into space, and we would just hide it so that it's not... not being seen. We could do it, you know, we could do geometry-wise, you could do it with material. We just show certain parts. It does seem to be sneaking through certain places. I mean, with all this drag, it is, you know, I might have gone overboard with the drag. Let's try 5%. So essentially every frame it's losing 5% of its energy. And I just want it to be enough that we don't start, like the ribbon shouldn't start catching up too much. Because this donut traveling up and down is definitely putting some oscillations which wants to tug everything, but it seems to be doing an okay job even at 5%. The harder that's tugging, the more that this will fight. We could, or what are things we can do? We can add some additional thickness on the actual rope. You can already see that starting to like layer up now. A little bit of thickness on there goes a long way. And then we already dropped our subframes down, but you know, potentially we could drop our subframes down again and like double our collision passes. That might be a cleaner way. I don't have a amazing intuition for these. I mean, I kind of know the settings I want to change, but I don't know what like great numbers are for them. Although 2 collision passes seems to look pretty good. As it loops around a few times, they do seem to pass through a bit. I might make... I like that you can add thickness onto the cloth, but you can't add like an expansion thickness on top of the model. Yes, it starts sneaking through. Enemy is constantly tugging. I'm trying to think of how I might stop these from escaping out in the back. More geometry could do something. We're already colliding only with the front, which makes sense. A bevel could work. Honestly, something rounded slightly could go a long way. Like right now, it's these very sharp edges. So even a simple bevel, which honestly we can just add in right now. It's running quick enough. Bevel, 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 bevel. Did it backwards. Bevel. Okay, so now we get that one little crease of a bevel. It's going to explode on this corner. That's not surprising. There's already a bad corner. Like, why wouldn't that explode? Bad polygons. Bad. Yeah, a bunch of that geometry is not so good. Excuse me. Close that back up again. I mean, I'm not, you know, the other side's going to do the same thing. Actually, the other side was pretty clean. Good enough, I say. A little bit of intersecting geometry, but I just want to see if a little bevel stops those from sneaking through quite as much. We should keep in mind, like I said, this entire rope is very low poly, so like there's not much fidelity for these corners in general. Yeah, it's doing all right. Could be better. We've got a lot of ribbon. We're not even getting close to the end. I'm going to hit US and subdivide the entire thing. And yeah, okay, we got a lot. So I will delete about half of it. Well, you know, maybe a little bit. Cutting a little short, but we're just trying to see if we can solve that problem. Belt. That. I can definitely bend those corners better. Oh, I guess we do have double the poly count vertically as well, so this ribbon itself is kind of pinching as this donut forces it up and down. Donut was like a very just fast way to do it. The extra subdivision actually seems to be doing better than anything else we had done before. I'm not seeing any bad intersections anywhere. I'm really impressed at the ability for this to be tugging the entire piece of cloth. In the past, I feel like the front part of the ribbon would be getting so stretched and the back part would be barely moving. But with this new simulation stuff, it seems to be working quite well. I'm gonna move the entire 9 down a little bit. The donut seems to be pushing it a little bit too far. And then just we're more subdivided, so I'm gonna say, let's see if we go kind of minimal with the bendiness. I'll say 0 stretchiness. Just don't know what will happen. Whoa. Seems better overall. It's definitely maintaining these corners better. I feel like subdividing the ribbon was the way to go. Yeah, just for having the rig randomly do this thing, it's not bad. The donut's a little quick moving up and down now. Any follow-ups to this question specifically? But yeah, it's super fun to just play. Zach mentioning a denser mesh on the ribbon would be good, and yeah, that did end. I mean, I was avoiding it just so that we could run nice and quick, but it definitely seems to have been the solution to this. It's just running. It's running quite nicely. Wrapping this up with rope would be almost the exact same process, just with a spline instead, and that would be running even quicker. Yeah, so it's working fine. Just for anybody who, we saw before that it was like, oh, the ribbon was coming out from a box, and obviously we're just flying out from space really far away. But, let's say that this was supposed to be coming out from like a slot in this box. If you wanted to fake it, there's a bunch of different potential ways to do it. And I mean, we're not actually colliding with that. I'm not sure if the donut will actually keep it there, but I'm ignoring this wiggling in and out. It just goes to how would you stop the ribbon from showing up further to the left? And if you wanted it to, like, for realsies not be there, then what I might do would be, let's see if this works. The geometry for the ribbon is here. That's a deformer. I don't know which one calculates first, but what if we make a poly effect, which has always been very quick to calculate. And I'm going to say this poly effects will affect the polygons. So we will add in a linear field. No, wait, it doesn't need a field. It needs a effector. I'll add in a linear effector. And this will scale uniformly, absolutely, -1, which means everything scales down to nothing. Those moved, which is potentially bad. But let's see. I got a way around it, even if it doesn't like it. So now you can see if I move this over, do you see how... oh, look at those move. That's weird. Okay, this won't work, but let me show you the idea. If I shrink this down really small and change the orientation, you can see that I can say, okay, I'm just erasing out polygons from over there. So I'm just curious what visually this will do. Yeah, so those don't exist. Like those just, it's like at the beginning, so well, those polygons weren't there, so they don't exist. So instead, what we need to do is say, here's the ribbon. Feed that into a connect object. So now this connect object is like a brand new piece of geometry taking the result of whatever happened. So I'm going to say, don't run the poly effects on the ribbon, because what that's doing is it's calculating before the cloth. Before the cloth is happening. But now I'm saying, okay, now you're getting connected. It doesn't have to weld. And so now this poly effects is not running on the ribbon, it's running on the connect object. So let's change the connect to be a color. And now, only having made that change, let's see. Yep. So only having made that change, now you can see that the ribbon is not showing up here in the box. And now it's because the connect object is like, well, here's just the model I'm getting. And that model is saying, yeah, it's doing the exact same thing we had before. But, and we'd have to trap it into like this slot, which wouldn't be super difficult. I mean, we've got the donut moving up and down. But it can still escape from there. And it might move up further than the box would allow, but you know, we could just make the box or an equivalent bit of model limit it. Honestly, I'm not even super inclined to do it. I bet you we could even just make this donut editable, scale it down and up, and just make it so that that would be matching a bit better. So it's kind of trapped in a smaller section. Now that still might push up too far, but you know, that should be a better, more accurate thing where it's going to be trapped a little bit more inside the box, and you see that the end result goes. Yeah, I can still travel up, but keep in mind, we're not colliding there. Let's keep in mind these are going as well. I think what we saw right there for a second is that it did successfully travel slightly higher than even this cone was allowing it to travel. So just something to keep in mind. We probably need the cone to be a little bit taller. It does seem to be sneaking through the model again. That should have... Oh, it seems to be just a viewport refresh. As soon as I like moved my viewport, it suddenly popped back out again. Yeah, so one thing is calculating before the other. That might be because of the connect. So that's probably just the connect object doing it. I think it would still render correctly. But you're getting one frame where it doesn't look correct. It's still calculating correct. We did put into a connect object. I wonder if that actually does have to be a connect object. Like, let me turn off the connect. And, no, yeah, okay, so the connect might indeed be necessary, that we have to run on that piece of geometry. Put that into a null, put the polyeffects outside of it. That really, I don't think will change the, yeah, it's not changing anything. I mean, it will work, but we still get that kind of frame of lag. Boop. Big difference between the frame of lag that being there or not. It's like, oh, that's super messed up. And then pause it. It's like, oh, wait, it's perfect. Any questions or follow-ups to this? We got about 20 minutes left. Is the polyeffects affecting the collision, or is it the viewport lag? Yeah, okay. You're asking a question right before I tackle it. Zach is always like on the same page that I am. Dean is asking, when is it recommended to check weld when using the connect object? All the time if you want things to weld. Let me save this. I'm going to add on render display use lines. Okay. That'll be better for somebody opening up the scene file. Okay. What's a good example? The reason I almost always turn weld off, what's a good example? Because a lot of these things, there used to be good reasons to do it all the time, but they got, you know, they changed it so it doesn't happen. Okay, actually, here's a good example. So when we have this text object, do you see when I make the text object editable, you actually have this whole MoGraph hierarchy, which is a null with a text, with an extrude, with a spline. That's what's actually doing behind the scenes. Now, I think there is a setting in here. Actually, I don't think there is now. I think about it. But anyway, if I feed this into a connect, by default, it's got weld turned on. And weld behaves the exact same way a weld does in vanilla cinema, which would be, let me show you. If we make a cube, and I make said cube editable, and I select this and say U, Shift D, I'm going to say don't preserve the groups, and now this polygon is now completely separate. So I could take this and move it 75 forward, and I can move it and say go 75 back. Makes perfect sense. If I feed this into a subdivision surface, though, we're going to see that that front is actually, it's a way of showing that it's disconnected. Like this piece is not connected there, which makes the subdivision surface behave in a slightly different way. But if I were to feed this into a connect object, you see that it's actually re-welded that back together. If I turn it off, it'll leave it separate. So it's all about, if 2 points are directly on top of each other, are they going to get welded together or not? Certain times you want them to, certain times you don't. And you have to be careful in a bunch of different ways. Well, so once again, stepping through, we've got this text object, and currently I have it, let's turn off weld. If I make this editable, it's one object, and that's fine. But we didn't weld anything. So if I select this front face and I pull it forward, oh, no, looks like it, sure. That might make sense. Yeah, apologies. You can't count on the text object and the motex being a way of explaining things because Maxon hard-coded them to behave in certain ways that aren't, what's the best way to say it? Well, they don't, they're doing things that are outside of the SDK to make the text object work. So when I make this, when I hit the letter C to make this editable, it's actually not a real make editable. It's a special exception make editable for the text object. At least that's my assumption. So instead, okay, in order to show it, I'm going to make it editable first. Okay, so now I've made it editable. So now if I make this connect editable and I select this front face and pull it forward, okay, what am I doing wrong here? Weld is turned off. Oh, these are welded automatically. Yeah, I totally forgot that they made it so those weld automatically now. Okay, well, I already kind of showed that. That was already a redundant example because I showed it with a cube. Anyway, another place where I would be careful about welding, it's all over the place, but just as a easy visual example, if I put this into a volume builder, into a volume mesher, and let's make that decently high resolution, you can see that, okay, all of these are, you know, it's a nice mesh. And depending on rigs and modifiers and deformers, like I might put this into, actually, here's a good example. If I put a bend deformer here and I bend it, it's like, oh, that's got a nice curve to it. Well, it doesn't, but you know, imagine that it had a nice curve to it. Let's make this slightly more, there, slightly better. So now we get this curve to it. But if I make the volume mesher editable, you see it didn't actually bake that down. So as my own shortcut, what I would do is I would take that and throw that into a connect object and turn off weld and make it editable. And you see that now it has baked it all the way down. That's just my workflow. There's several other ways you could do it. Instead of doing that, instead of a connect, let me delete that. I could right click and say current state to object, and you could even say connect objects and delete. And that's essentially the same thing. I just do it via the connect object. And the reason I do it via the connect object is it gives me the welding option. So even though this isn't the default, if I fed this into a connect object, by default, weld is turned on. And in this case, it won't break anything because the tolerance is down at 0.1 and none of these points are within 0.1. But you could easily imagine if you have a very tiny model that your tolerance might be within a certain threshold. And I'm going to exaggerate it here, but if you start pushing it really far, do you see how these points start looking really funky? Now, if you want to make like a weird kind of funky low poly look, this could be a good thing. But what's happening right now is points that are within a certain tolerance of each other are getting welded together. And that's an unintended consequence. My reason for baking this down is not because I want to weld points. It's just because I want to quickly bake it down. So oftentimes, almost all the time, I turn off weld. The other reason to turn off weld is oftentimes we are using it in a parametric way where it's like, okay, we're using this parametrically and you know, this isn't creating a problem, but it's still running the algorithm. By turning on weld, internal to this connect object is going to be a welding algorithm, which is going to a point and saying, okay, point, what are my connecting neighbor points? So it's like, okay, I'm here. That's a neighbor. That's a neighbor. That's a neighbor. That's a neighbor. Are those within this tolerance? Yes. Weld them together. No, don't weld them together. So now imagine all these points doing that calculation, and depending on your radius, that means every single, potentially in this case, every single point is going to be doing a search radius. I'm not sure, I don't actually know what the code is doing, but my assumption is it's looking at all the neighbors. So in this case, every point is looking at 4 neighbors, and then it's doing a distance calculation, and then it's having to do some sort of welding command, and potentially that's redoing things like UVs and whatnot. Even if there are no points that are getting welded, that calculation is still happening. Is that calculation pretty dang fast? Like, yeah, it's pretty dang fast. Like, Cinema's really good at doing those kind of point calculations, but that's a huge amount of calculation if you have a very complicated model. You know, that you might be chopping 5 or 10 frames per second off of your scene time. So when it's a live connect, I will turn it off unless there's a good reason to have it be on. So, sorry, that's a big complicated explanation for why I'm almost constantly turning off the weld, but not always. Nifty, not too late. Let's see. Ahmed is asking if we can expect a major cinema update anytime soon. Even if I knew, I wouldn't be able to tell you from all sorts of NDAs. The answer Maxon always gives is there's always been, for many, many, many years now, there's been an update, sometime in the September range, traditionally, but Maxon's been changing the way that they've been thinking about updates, because we got that giant 0.1 update recently, and I made like an hour and a half long video just talking about the different features inside of the 0.1 update. So yeah, but yeah, I can't say anything official, and Maxon won't say anything official, or at least they typically don't. Emiliano is mentioning that, oh yeah, you want to be careful about not welding your connect object. If you're baking to Alembic, I want to make sure that your point count is consistent, because yeah, if 2 points suddenly, if you have a character and then the hand gets really close to, say, the other arm, 2 points might get welded there, and now your point count has changed, and that'd be really bad. Eric, when is that on the horizon for any particular time? The 4090s? Because if so, I'm in a position I can wait. Yeah, I would love to tackle that question in the future, given a better context, given more time and us being able to kit bash a little bit and whatnot. I would like to, if anybody has another question, feel free. Oh, in 2 months? Yeah, that's totally doable. I'm going to, somebody if there's another question, pop it in there. I'm just going to set this up for a don't save it animation, because I want to see if it does render properly, because we can tell that it's not correct in the viewport, but when I pause it, it pops in correct. And that's always dangerous, because, I don't know, it's like a 50-50 if it doesn't render correctly, because that's wrong. So, render not redshift. I don't think there's a difference between redshift and not redshift in this context. It looks correct. That's not sneaking through. So good. It's wrong in the viewport, which, unfortunate, but renders correctly. That's the important part. Can you make a social sizes overlay for cameras via Xpresso? Can you elaborate by what you mean by social sizes? Crossfader. Yadaglow is in the chat. Welcome. Yeah, I'm going to wait for Crossfader to elaborate on what he means. And Tropes is asking if anybody, I'm going to assume anybody in the chat is has any recommendations for upgrading their computer, because I definitely don't. But anyway, yeah, this rendered out correctly, which is excellent. Yeah, look at that. It's working great. That entire thing should be put into a subdivision surface for sure, but working very nicely. So you're asking for, yeah, you want, okay, so you want a 1-to-1. I wonder if we could do something like that. It's not a bad idea. So if we make a camera, the math well, the way I've always done things is I didn't care about the scale. I just cared about the relative scale. But just to throw it out there, if I, become the camera, here's just a cube, but it's like, oh, I'm going to want some text. So I'd make a 3D text and make a child of the camera. And then what I would do is make it whatever arbitrary size. Let's say it's going to be pretty tiny, so I'll say 20. But then I can say reset the transform, and now the text has gotten it's intersecting the camera essentially. It's right there. But I can say, okay, but let's pull that out and down and give it almost no thickness. So now if I go to the camera, you see it's okay, I got the text there. I can scale it down and start moving it. And I could just eyeball this, and I don't really care. As long as it's nice and tiny, close to the camera, put the right render tags in there, that works just fine. And now, the advantage here is now you see that if I go in, because it's a child of the camera, if I go and rotate around my scene, that this text just comes along for the ride. So that's what I typically do. Crossfader is asking if it's possible to have them be absolute as far as your screen resolution is concerned. I wonder if there's anything that like Maxon has built that would do that like super specifically. And I don't know, but here's my thought. Well, first of all, yes, but there might be a bunch of math involved. So your DPI is going to matter, but that's something we can look at. Okay, let's actually just step through, because I've got some ideas in my head of the way this might work. Programming tags, Xpresso. Okay, so we're gonna bring in this rectangle. We're definitely gonna need the camera at some point, and several things we'll need from the camera. It's like 1 pixel. Rectangle, we need the width, we will need the height, and we will need its Z offset, which is positive numbers, so keep that in mind. Okay, so those are the things we're going to need. So we've got the camera here, and the camera is going to be outputting a ratio, but that doesn't actually give us all the information we need. So here's something, let's see if it still works. If I go into my render settings, this is my active render. Did you know you can drag your render settings into Xpresso, which is super crazy, but you can totally do it. So now that these render settings are in Xpresso, I can say, I want to see the width and the height resolution-wise. I was like, okay. And then the resolution, I don't think the DPI is going to matter here. So now we've got a width that we can feed into the width, and I have a height I can feed into the height. And now you can see that we end up with a particular scale, and mathematically, I don't know for sure, but yeah, how would you do this? Because like, oh, maybe it's as simple as that. So I just plugged the height also into my Z offset, and now you can see it took that rectangle and it moved it exactly to the point where that rectangle is going to intersect this plane. So I was like, okay, that totally worked. So now we've got this very precise rectangle that is the resolution of the screen. So then what I would do is, I guess, well, I would probably make a control here. So I'd say like added user data, and it's already set to percentage. So I'd say, I'm just going to call it scale, and we'll go 0 to 100%. So now you can see I got user data, and I'm going to say 10%. So I can just type in whatever number I want there. So now I'm going to use this as the data from the camera, and that's saying 10%. So I'm going to say that like that's the absolute scale, but I want it to be 10% of that size. Essentially, to me, it's going to be really close to the camera. It's going to be 1/10 of the distance to the camera, but that ratio should be locked. So all I should really have to do is add a Xpresso calculate. Nope, that's not what I want. Just give me, sorry, I'm getting confused with the nodes and not Xpresso. Okay, anyway, we've got the scale, and that would multiply. We're going to need 3 of these. Actually, we only need 2 of them. We need the width to multiply by it, and we need the scale to multiply by it. And now anywhere the height is going, let's get the height. And anywhere the width is going, let's pull it from the width. So now you can see, hopefully, that this is now 1/10 of the original size, but it's still perfectly the correct ratio. And it's now, 1/10 of the way away from the camera as far as the resolution is concerned. So we can now use this camera scale as an absolute multiplier to place this anywhere we want scale-wise. So that's me manually changing these properties. Let's make sure if I go to my render settings, I'm not sure if this will render or update in real time. Oh, it totally does. So you can see I can change like my width, and the rectangle is updating to match properly. And we're at 10% of the distance, or in this case, 19. So yeah, we can just totally match whatever ratio that we want it to. But now, essentially, this rectangle, I wonder if, is this a good idea? We could probably do this. If I put a null and I reset that to the camera, this is a bad idea, by the way. This is a very bad idea. I guess let me save it where it's at, because this does work. Camera resolution match. Okay, so here's the terrible idea. I'm going to set the scale up to 100%. And now that's sort of like the real world scale. Like that's what the pixels will look like according to the camera. So I'm going to break the connection there and just tell both of those to multiply by 1. So now that's not, this camera scale has got nothing to do with that. So now instead we'll make a null. I'll zero that null out from the point of view of the camera. Make the rectangle a child of the null. Oh man, there's so many ways that this is a terrible idea. Because we'd lose the resolution. We'd lose the resolution. Let me follow through on the thought. I'm going to break all these connections. So I've got this rectangle, and now essentially this is real world scale. So if I were to make a sub box in it and say, but this box should be 100 pixels by 100 pixels, don't move it on Z, but I can move it on X and Y. And now you can see I got this square. So if I go back to my point of view, I've got this rectangle that'll perfectly be within my safe frames. And I've got this. I set that to 100 by 100, right? So anything that will render out perfectly on your screen at 100 pixels. I mean, you might have like the anti-aliasing on the edges, but that should be 100. So if I make, another box, I could say that this one is 200 wide, and that, that should be exactly 200. As long as the coordinate of Z is 0, and this rectangle is where it's currently at, that should just work. So maybe that's where the question stops and ends there. But then, but now we've got all those things are existing like way out in space. So we could scale this null. This is a terrible idea. But we can scale that null. And what are we going to control? Well, I'm going to control the coordinate transform scale right there. If I feed the camera scale in there, we are now scaling. What we should be doing is scaling this null here as an object, not as a model, as an object. And I always say it's a terrible idea to scale things as an object. But if you are meticulous with it, I should be able to scale this down. And now that is, let's go back down to 10%. Now it's nice and close to the camera. We can even say 1%. It is now tiny, teeny, super duper close to the camera. And if I click to look at from the point of view of the camera, it still looks exactly the same. So it's kind of giving us the best of both worlds, or I am free to take this and move it around, do whatever changes I want. And you'll even see that it still says it's 200 by 100. It will still be that on the screen, but in the actual world of the scene, this is now only 1% of that size. And here's why, as a general rule, this is a terrible idea, is because it'd be really easy to mess it up. I'm going to go back to 10%. And let's say that you're like, okay, cool. I want to now modify that. Or now I want to add something to it. So let me make a text spline, and I'll make that a child of this, and I'll zero out its position, or zero out its rotation. So now you see I've got text over there. But look, the text hasn't scaled. The text is its original size. So if I click on this camera, this text, if I click on it, it's going to say like, oh, it's got a height of 30. It's like, oh, okay, that's pretty huge. But that's because if we go over to these coordinates, yeah, look at this. Because the rectangle, we scaled it down. Actually, not the rectangle. Because of this null, we scaled it down to 0.1. But now I dragged in an object when this thing was already modified. So now you'll see if I click on the rectangle says, oh, I'm 1. That's 1 relative to the scale. Makes perfect sense. But now we've brought in that new text object that came in after the fact it got scaled. And now if I select the text object, you'll see it's actually a scale of 10. And this stuff quickly goes into the world of like utter nonsense where that doesn't mean anything anymore. And you can't count on these numbers. If I made a brand new rectangle and drag it in, I could think, right now I can type in 200 by 100, and that would be what it is. But watch, if I make a brand new rectangle and I drop it as a child of our rectangle, and I say, okay, 0 out the position, 0 out the rotation. It's like, okay, cool. Let's say I want that to be 100 by 100. Look at that. It's huge. It's super big. Why is it super big? Because it came in when something was 10% the scale. It was its original scale, so now it's 10 times whatever its number is relative to it. So that's where the math gets super, like, messy. Now, like I said, this, if you're working with it carefully and meticulously, what you could do is always make sure that if you're going to make some sort of fundamental change, you put this back to 100, bring in a new object, and once you brought in the new object, now you drop it back down to, say, 1%. And it would scale everything back down properly. But you can't, and I can make, once it's in this world, I am free to go in and move things around and make changes. Because, you know, its own local coordinates are very sensical. Its own local width and height are very sensical. But if I drag a brand new objects in here, it's total nonsense. None of the numbers mean anything. So yeah, all kinds of crazy complicated there. But yeah, us matching the resolution, that was actually fairly trivial. But let me see if I think CrossFader's been explaining some more, so I might not fully be understanding what you were going for. I saw you were trying to correct, but I wanted to finish those thoughts. Can you make social sizes, camera overlay, 4 cameras via Xpresso? 4 cameras via Xpresso. So it sounds like, okay, I think I might understand a little bit better what you mean, which is Instagram is square, Twitter is like 4x3 or whatever it is. TikTok is going to be vertical, and you kind of wanted some settings that would jump to those. I mean, I guess I mean, each of those is a different render setting, right? But I guess the question goes to, do the doors swing both ways? Can we use Xpresso to drive the render settings? That'd be kind of weird, but camera drive res. Yeah, can we go the opposite direction? So let's reset our scale back to the default of 100. And honestly, none of that stuff even matters anymore. We might as well start it in the scene file. So I mean, honestly, the basic thing just goes to, let's manage some user data, and first test if we can type in real world units here. And no, that should be horizontal, and let's do vertical, and you know, we could just type in whatever number we want. Here's I don't want to actually set a max, so we'll turn off the max value. We could set a default value, so let's just do 916, just so that's that size. So, you know, that's all that we've done. Can I, in Xpresso, grab the horizontal, the vertical, grab my render, and my active render settings, keep that in mind. We could link different ones in, but these are the active render settings. Can we drive the width and the height? I probably should name them that, but let's see if I can plug those in. It didn't refresh. Doesn't mean it can't. No, it doesn't look like it can actually. We can get info from the render settings, but we can't control the render settings. This is not refreshing. Not surprising. That'd be a very dangerous thing to do. I mean, even think about it. In theory, it means you could potentially keyframe. Do you see how there's no dot here? Because they don't want you keyframing the width. Imagine if you were rendering out a series of like JPEGs, and then you would keyframe the width, and the width of each image was changing over time. Like, I guess there's a reason that could work, but obviously it seems kind of crazy. So yeah, I can't change that. And then at a certain point, I mean, you know, what you should really, I don't know, but shouldn't you just be, you know, making different render settings here? Where you could be, you know, one by one. You would just manually make your render settings here. That'd be the way to actually do your social. Maybe I'm not following the question, but yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Using Xpresso to drive render settings would be huge. What's an example, Zach? What's something that you would that would help with? I mean, I guess you could, in theory, be, you know, driving progressive passes. So it's like, oh, at a certain point, like your passes would be higher, they would be lower, like driven via noise. I mean, I guess you get kind of crazy and artistic with that type of thing. A grid overlay on the camera. Yeah. I don't know. Well, I think I might know what you mean now, but I feel like we kind of covered some interesting things there. The grid overlay, you know, I would just make a spline that does it, or I even have the grid maker that we made from Axon, so I could drag in the spline grid, and then I think you could drive this with Xpresso. So you can see I've got this grid generated, and if that was a child of the camera, and we let's make it 10. Let's delink from the camera. So we want X to be X, Y, Z. 1, 0 actually. And then you offset that. Then yeah, we could, you know, just use Xpresso to drive whatever you want your subdivisions to be. It's already all built in there. With different resolutions. Yeah, I mean, straightforward math at that point. I mean, a lot of it goes to, that's one of the problems with Xpresso, teaching Xpresso, is, you know, use cases are so incredibly specific, because depending on the way you laid out your settings would completely change the way you would build the tool, like just rearranging things where it's like, if it's based off your render settings, or if it's something you're typing in manually, would completely change the way we build the rig. So the specifics super duper matter when it comes to that type of thing. But yeah, don't forget about the grid generator that we built over here, and everybody has inside their asset browser. And you could set this to box mode and put some gap, get little rectangles going. And you could do segments, and yeah, put little gaps in between each of the segments. Just get little lines giving you indicators. It's pretty cool. You could layer them up and do 2. Change that to box mode with a slightly bigger gap. Aha. I know, pretty weird and fun. If you haven't played with grid, you can do the grid. Zach answering the question I asked earlier. You'd have to use takes linked in your render settings, but it'd be nice to automatically switch to different resolutions depending on which camera you had. Yeah, I could see the use case for that. Yeah, it is interesting. But yeah, actually, I think that will wrap up today's episode. We're going over time just a bit. But yeah, next week, again, let's recap finale next week. So make sure you come here. I'll be giving away some free copies of some of our plugins, maybe some free copies of the Gemstone collection. In addition to that, actually, anybody who's here, if you want to help out, if you're on Twitch, even if you're on YouTube, head over to Twitch. Because if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe for free using your Amazon Prime. So it gives me a free subscription. And it's a subscription you're probably, or if you're not already using it, then it's just kind of sitting there doing nothing. So you can support Rocket Lasso that way. I've also got my Patreon set up. If you want to support there, you get early access to the scene files, or actually you get access to scene files, and you get early access to the videos and tutorials as they come out. And there's a bunch of free model collections that are in there as well, like the gemstones and some dominoes and some dice and a bunch of different things I put together there. And I think you have to renew the Prime subscription every month. So if you did it last month, you have to do it again. Let me think. Like I said, next week, last one. bonus stuff. Get your half-res tickets if you are anywhere near the Midwest. Get your half-res tickets. Come on in. Have a party with everybody. Should be fun. Our first big one since, pre-pandemic. And what else is there? Yeah, keep an eye out for some Rocket Lasso stuff coming out. We're working really hard on some things. It's going to be exciting. Yeah, that'll do it. Crossfader, are you making it to half-res this year? Crossfader has been to half-res. But anyway, thanks for the questions, everybody. We had some good ones in there. That'll do it. I'll see everybody next week for the finale. Bye-bye.